Manjushri with utmost respect. Gentle-voiced guide, you always protect from clouds of true veil. Your wisdom is free, brilliant and pure like sunshine you be. The nature of truth you see and impart, a volume of prajna you hold at your heart. Clouded by ignorance in endless night, beings suffer cruelly from torment and fright, entrapped in the prison of samsara's guile. You love everyone like a mother her child. With 60 tones, your rich voice resounds like roaring dragons, and thunder it pounds, waking us up from the anguish of sleep. You break the chains of the karma we reap. Your sword cuts swiftly the root of our pain, dispelling the blindness we cling to in vain. Perfectly pure with qualities rare, then Bhumi's traversed, the conqueror's air, adorned with 112 noble signs. You are the Buddha who constantly shines, lighting the darkness of mind here and now. Manjushri, to you I wholeheartedly bow.
Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me? Great. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our very, very first verse to music session. This is what I hope will be the first of many fruitful collaborations between artists, musicians, and translators. So I'm so thrilled to have everybody here today, and especially these brilliant musicians who've been working with us. So welcome, everybody. Just a little bit of background about why the Cancer Vision Project is including this initiative in our scope. I actually first started working on putting verse to music about 30 years ago with Alison, actually, at the Vajradhara Gompa. Zogsi Rimshe asked us to play around with some of the prayers that we were working on then, and we had some fun with harmonies. And I know since then Rimshe has spent a lot of energy and is very enthusiastic in supporting this kind of initiative, especially the fertile cross-collaboration between artists, musicians, and translations. So also when this project actually first got established, Rimshe asked us specifically to think about creating metered verse for some of our prayers, and especially for the prayers that are very well known. So the Manjushri praise is one of those very well-known prayers that we thought we'd try to put metered verse to. There's also a number of people on the team who have a very deep love of poetry and who also happen to be musicians. So this is something that's very close to our heart, and I hope that we'll continue to produce some beautiful poetry and metered verse that can easily be transformed into chantable versions or just into musical experiences. So just a little bit extra about from the perspective of the Cancer Vision Project. So there are three main reasons why we want to explore putting verse to music. So the first is to engage with younger generations of potential Dharma enthusiasts, and I guess to bring alive the Dharma through artistic mediums, especially through music. And this is particularly to support the vision of Zogsi Rimshe. The second reason really is to create chantable versions of prayers for sanghas. So to make it easy for Western sanghas to chant together, which is quite a difficult feat since everybody has different styles, tastes. It's incredibly difficult to actually get one kind of style that we can all easily sing to. And then I guess the last reason would be to just explore that creative energy that is inherent in art forms such as music, poetry, art, dance, and the way that this kind of in itself is a path to go beyond the conceptual mind and can be a source of really fabulous creative energy that is really useful and helpful to tap into as a practitioner. So this is just the beginning of our initiative, but I think you'll find once you've listened to all of the versions that the musicians have created that it's quite a remarkable beginning. We've got the most amazing offerings from these musicians already, and the styles, the variety of styles is huge. My favorite thing about it is this huge variety of the actual kind of mood of the different pieces. So we've got a couple that have really interesting rhythms, like 5/4 rhythms, Alison's version, 7/8 rhythms, Cy version. We've got an a cappella gospel type style from Nick. We've got this beautiful, beautiful kind of spoken beat poetry version to music from Cy. We've got a folk version from Benny and a beautiful, beautiful choral version from Harry. So all of them are so different and all so beautiful. And really, I'm so grateful to the musicians for giving their time and energy to be part of this initiative. And on that note, I just wanted to emphasize that all of these musicians have been very generous in offering this music to the Cancer Vision Project. None of them have been paid to do this. And I know I'm incredibly grateful for them for their generosity, but I also wanted to just bring to everybody's attention the plight of the artists, because often we kind of expect musos and artists to give us their work without any support. And I know that to produce these pieces of music takes an enormous amount of time and energy and effort. So just putting that out there, that I'm hoping that this initiative will also help to kind of generate the kind of appreciation necessary to get this artistic expression of the Dharma funded into the future more readily and more easily. So that's one of my deep wishes for all of you artists and musos. So on that note, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Zack and Christian, who are going to MC for this event. And yeah, enjoy yourselves, everybody.
Thanks, Dharma. Thanks for the introduction. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, okay, good. Thanks. My name is Zack Beer. I am the lead of the translation team here at Cancer Vision Project. And I, first of all, want to welcome everybody to our event. We're all really excited to be here. So thanks everybody for joining both on Zoom and on YouTube. Let me first start by saying something about the plan for the event today. So I'm going to start by having a quick conversation with my colleague on the translation team, Christian Bernert, who's going to help me in, as Dharma mentioning, emceeing the event. Then we will introduce you all to the musicians who have kindly agreed to contribute interpretations to the event today. And we'll hear a selection from their different versions, which, by the way, are also up on YouTube, so you can listen to them in their entirety on your own time. Following that, we will have a conversation, Christian and I, with all of the different musicians about different kinds of things, like their process in putting together the different versions, and also where we're at in the process of bringing Tibetan Buddhism to the West as it pertains to music and poetry and so forth. And finally, at the end, we'll have a Q&A with you participants in the audience. So at any point during the event today, if you have any questions that come up to your mind that you would like to pose to one of the musicians, please do feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat, whether you're in Zoom or in YouTube. And we will do our best to get through as many questions as we can. So that's a little bit about the structure. Let me first say then about myself. I am, as Dharma mentioned, one of the people on Kinsey Vision Project who is interested in who's interested in poetry and music generally, and interested in the relationship between Dharma and music and poetry. I used to be a musician myself. I used to play trumpet and orchestra and in different bands. I also had the pleasure of studying poetry in university. I got to study with some great poets, including Robert Hass, who used to be a poet laureate in the United States, and Evan Boland, who was a poet laureate of Ireland, and who they instilled in me a great love of poetry and the sonality of words. And that carried on into my next life, my more recent life as a Dharma translator. So I went on to live 10 years in Nepal. And in Nepal, for any of you who have spent time in Tibetan Buddhist communities, you know how important group chanting and singing and music really is. If you walk around the streets in any Tibetan Buddhist community, you get very used to the sound of drums and Tibetan horns echoing through the neighborhood. And you get used to the sound of the like chanting and singing coming out of Tibetan Buddhist monasteries. So more recently, having moved back to the West, I have those memories in my mind a lot, and I've developed a kind of curiosity about, you know, where we're at in terms of Dharma in the West, and seeing how important group chanting and singing has been to Buddhist communities traditionally. How we can continue to bring that to life in our communities as we go forward. What kind of inspirations do we have? I think we have a lot of inspirations. You know, we have those of us who are involved in Tibetan Buddhism. We have the inspirations coming from the Tibetan tradition. The melodies of different kinds of practices are so important, especially if you're talking about things like the Dharma tradition, where the sound, the harmony, the melody is part and parcel of the practice itself. But also, you know, being an American, I think a lot about the homegrown traditions that have come from America, like jazz and blues and soul music and so forth, and what kind of inspiration we can draw from those as well. On top of course, the more spiritually oriented types of music, like Native American music and Christian gospel music. There's so much room for inspiration among all these traditions. And I've had those a lot on my mind. And so it was with great pleasure that I joined Kinsey Vision Project and discovered that I was one among many people on the team who are interested and curious about the possibilities of connection between the different traditions. And that's part of what brings us here together today, that type of curiosity and potential for inspiration. So I'm very happy to be here today with a group of like-minded people, Doma Gunther and Christian Bernert from our team, as well as 5 musicians, Harry Einhorn, Alison Wells, Cy Gorman, Nick Demeris, and Benny Oyama, who we have, as Doma mentioned, have asked to put together an inspired version of our selected text, which is this quite famous praise to Manjushri. Doma mentioned something about it, but let me just say a few more words about the text that is at the center of the discussion today. So this is a very famous praise to Manjushri that is known by, I would say, probably most Tibetans. You end up memorizing it. Anybody who is interested in wisdom, this is one of the most famous prayers that you would make to Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, to get more blessings of wisdom. If you're studying in a Tibetan Buddhist context, you frequently chant this at the beginning of a class and so forth. And there's different narratives about how it came about. According to one narrative, there was a master named Vajrashastra who composed it. There's a more common narrative that it came about at the request of one particular abbot at an Indian monastery who requested a bunch of pandits to compose a praise to Manjushri, and they all simultaneously and spontaneously came up with the exact same set of verses together. So it's a very famous prayer that is very well known. And you might be interested in what connection this has to Khyentse Vision Project. So Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo composed a sadhana of sorts, a way of doing Manjushri practice that puts this particular praise front and center. So it's at the core of what you chant in the liturgy of a particular practice that Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo composed. And so it features into Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo's writings in that way. And our very own Doma Gunther, who is mostly serving as the project director of Khyentse Vision Project, but also as a translator in her own right. So she made a version of this particular prayer as part of that translation, with an eye, or maybe it's better to say an ear, to trying to make a version that captures the beauty of the original, and also provides something that sounds very nice to chant in English. So what we've done is asked all of the musicians to take that version that Christian made, that Doma made along with our colleague Christian, who contributed some help, and see what they could do with it. See what they could do with their inspiration that came from reading through them. So that's the premise of the meeting today. And having made that general introduction, let me introduce my colleague, Christian Bernert. So Christian, I most commonly know as my fellow translator at Khyentse Vision Project, but today he's playing on two teams. He's both a translator as well as a musician. So Christian, I wonder if you wouldn't mind to say a little bit about your background as a translator and as a musician, and somebody who's interested in the connection between these two things.
Sure, I'm happy to. So first of all, hi everyone, and second, I was just blown away hearing that you're a trumpet player. I didn't know that about you, so that's really very cool. I want to hear more about that. About myself, I joined the Khyentse Vision Project along with Zack and many others to be part of this really beautiful and important translation initiative. My background in Tibetan studies is both in Nepal at the International Buddhist Academy, where I studied for a couple of years in the summer programs, as well as the University of Vienna, where I studied Tibetan studies and religious studies. So that's the background. On the music side, I don't have much actually, so I'm not trained at all. I cannot even read, I think the name, I don't even know the name, scores, right? I can read tabs, so I play a little bit of guitar, but not much actually, just for fun, basically. But what I did when I heard about this idea of putting this really, I think, masterful translation of the Manjushri praise by Dolma. And one thing maybe to mention is also that indirectly it's also praise to Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, because he's regarded as an emanation of Manjushri. So that's even one more connection we have there. So when I heard about that project, I happened to be near a recording studio where I live, because another friend asked me to do a voiceover for a video project. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to bring along my guitar and I had a tune in mind. So I started playing, my few chords. And then what was interesting is that the recording engineer himself a musician. His name is Nguyen Thanh Hung from Vietnam. That was the whole thing happened in Vietnam where I live. He just spontaneously, I didn't even ask for it. He took out his electric piano and he started improvising on top of what I was singing and what I was doing with my guitar. And then it was really so great. And you heard, some of you who, if you tuned in early, you heard the version, the first recording we played. So it was obviously so great what he did on the piano that I asked him to remove my guitar sound and just keep my voice, and then have his musical track added to it. And it was really so wonderful. So and then he added another version to that, which we also have on, which we're going to hear later, I think soon actually, which is more an orchestra version, which he worked on his computer as well. And we had a few sessions we worked together, but it was again mainly his inspiration. So I think, yeah, maybe that's a good place for me to stop, maybe to play that version.
Great. Yeah. As Christian mentioned, he put together not just one version, but two versions together. Sorry, you were going to say? Yeah,
well, actually, he did it. I just put in, I just added some comments. Yeah, that's it.
Good. Yeah, let's hear the second version that you put together with your collaborator.
And fright, and trapped in the prison of samsara's guile, you love everyone like a mother her child. With 60 tones, your rich voice resounds like roaring dragons, and thunder it pounds, waking us up from the anguish of sleep. You break the chains of the karma we reap.
Thanks, Christian. I like that a lot. Oh, I'm hearing someone else's voice. That was very cool. Let me just remind everybody. So what we're just going to be hearing is some excerpts. We won't have time to listen to the entirety of the different songs. So that was just a small piece. You can hear the rest up on YouTube. Christian, you want to say anything more about, you've said a little bit about the process of working together with this music producer, or anything more you'd like to add about how the inspiration came, or what it was like to work with him?
I mean, for me, the inspiration comes from, it's hard to say. I think it's, generally I enjoy music a lot, and I play a little bit. So I have already this, that's a little bit of the background. But from the Dharma perspective, and from also my involvement in terms of the activity I do mostly, which is translation, which means it's part of the transmission of the Dharma, right? We have the texts in their original language, and we try to make them available to other people now in English. And so part of that transmission is not just texts, what we're transmitting, right? We're transmitting the Dharma. And as human beings, there's so much more than just a person who is reading a text. We are fully embodied beings with many senses and many needs and wishes. And so music is, I think, music and arts in general are such an important aspect of what we are, that it would be such a pity not to make use of that and to integrate that into that endeavor of bringing the Dharma to others. So that's for me a very important motivation for doing this kind of work. And I hope to do more. Actually, I want to also, I'm involved in a longer project of similar nature, which is about the Samantabhadra prayer, but more on that another time.
Great. I look forward to hearing more about that. Great. Thanks, Christian, for that. Let me next introduce then Harry Einhorn. Hi, Harry.
Hello.
Hi, Harry. Harry, where are you?
I'm in Taipei.
Oh, welcome from Taipei. Um, Great. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and your interest in Dharma and music and the combination of those?
Sure. So I'm actually a second generation Buddhist. My parents were students of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And so I always grew up basically doing Dharma practice in English, and later on started practicing in Tibetan and connecting with the rhythm and feeling of that. As far as my musical background, I actually started with pretty much musical theater. I come from a kind of a theater family, and I studied also Western classical singing in school. And I actually started to sing for churches professionally. So I was a little Jewish Buddhist kid singing for churches, which was kind of strange. After university, I began studying North Indian classical music and also spent a lot of time in India, where I was really, really influenced by the atmosphere and the sounds, and especially the Tibetan chanting. So yeah, I think in one way or another, elements of all of that come into the work.
Thanks, Harry. Let's hear a little bit from your version.
Sure.
With 60 tones, your rich voice resounds like roaring dragons and thunder. It pounds.
That's very cool. I like the way that you integrated the mantra into it. You were not the only musician who made the decision to do that. You want to say something more about your process and putting that together, and when you got the verse, how did it? Yeah, how does it work for you to find the inspiration to put together a version and come up with something like this?
Well, I think I usually start with the text and kind of say it a few times and see what the energy of the text itself wants to say to me. I try not to kind of impose my idea on what it should be and really try to let it come out. And then when I'm composing, what I'll do is I'll just layer my voice and try different things. So I also, I actually don't have a lot of theory background and training. So it's somewhat of a spontaneous practice, and then you just have to kind of keep polishing, keep polishing, keep polishing. And so I'm really happy to hear that Kensei Vision Project is highlighting this as something important. Yeah.
Thanks, Harry. Appreciate it. Let's move on then to Alison Wells. Hi, Alison.
Hello.
Welcome. Hello and welcome. You're joining us from Australia, I take it?
I am, yes. And please, apologies if I start coughing. I'm recovering from COVID, so I'm still a bit there. But I think I'll be all right.
Oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that, but you look and sound great as far as I can tell.
Thanks.
Can you tell us all a bit about your background? I've heard a number of the different types of musical versions you've made, and I think they're all fantastic. But can you share a little bit about your background as a musician, a Dharma musician?
Yeah. So I was thinking, which bits to tell, because there are so many bits of my life that are tied up with Dharma and music. But I think the theme that runs through this is working with different vocal instruments. So when I was a kid, I always loved singing, and I had lots of friends who were really good singers, and I was always like the bit of the sidekick. I couldn't hit the high notes, and I was kind of like, yeah, come along for the ride. And when I was about 14, one of my friends, my next door neighbour, actually dragged me along to join a choir. And I was so excited to discover harmony. It's like, oh, I don't have to sing the high notes. There's a place for me here with my little voice with a really limited range. And having that experience really early on in my life of group music and group singing in particular, where it's just like the raw instrument is your voice, and joining together with others where you're part of something that's greater than the individual parts. And then when I went to uni, I decided I wanted to get a bit better at singing, and so I spent my beer and coffee money, went to singing lessons. And then in my final year of uni, I auditioned for the School of Music. Had this program where you could do a little half-hour lesson with one of the teachers at the School of Music, and it's like free. So I auditioned for that. And I was actually at my very first retreat with Zoxa Khyentse Rinpoche at Vajradhara, when I got the message that I had been successful. So I was offered the scholarship. And I was sitting in the teachings and I asked some random question about something, and Rinpoche went to me, "You should do a music degree." I was like, "Oh, no, it's just like a half-hour lesson. It's not serious. It's not a degree or anything." He said, "You should do a music degree." And I was like, oh. But somehow the seed was planted, and I did actually eventually, about 8 years later, went back to uni and did a degree in classical voice. And the thing that I got to sing arias and opera and all that sort of stuff, but the thing that really spoke to my heart was the ensemble work. And that's very much informed my Dharma music practice as well. I think Dharma was talking about a retreat we did where Rinpoche was working a lot on group chanting. It was my first sadhana retreat. And he was really emphasizing the importance of the group chant being together. And he used the analogy of lifting a heavy weight. It's like if everyone joins their forces together, 1, 2, 3, lift, you can lift a heavy weight. Whereas if each of you are individually under-coordinated, you can't do it. And I also like a similar analogy I like is rowing. Like if you think of the Olympic rowers, the eights, and they just put their oars in exactly the same time and they just go scooting through the water, and it's really like the coordination, like the power and the speed and the grace and everything. And so they're sort of images that I keep in my mind when I'm thinking about group chant. And so I think about what can music offer to help us achieve that as a group. So the aim for me is for group practice is to align our body, speech and mind with the intention towards realizing the truth. And so music can be a vehicle for this in lots of different ways, joining our voices together, rhythmically staying together. But then when you start to do that, as Dharma said, we met lots of challenges. It's quite hard to get, especially a group of Westerners together in Australia. We don't have a very strong musical education. People are not very confident. So how do you kind of build up that capacity? And one of the things that I've really noticed is that people find it really difficult to stay on one note. It's really hard to find a pitch or melody that everyone is vocally comfortable with. And I think my early experience of having quite a limited vocal range really taught me, it's like sometimes you might think you're not a good singer, but maybe you're just singing the wrong, you're singing at the wrong pitch. It's not comfortable for your voice. And so if you find the pitch that sits comfortably in your voice, you can go like the rowers, you can just go for hours kind of thing. So what I have done with the Praise to Manjushri, and I'm applying a formula that I've used also in the 21 Praises to Tara, is trying to break it down into very simple vocal lines with just 2, 3, 4 notes, but that fit together in harmonies that, again, very simple, familiar harmonies, sort of the 1, 4, 5 progression that you have in 60% of pop music in the West, and everyone would hear it on the radio every day, kind of thing. So it should be something that's very familiar to people. And my hope is that it could become like a formula that everyone gets familiar with the different parts. They only need to know the 3 notes. They can apply them to different words in any particular text. And then you can have kind of a flow where it's fitting together harmonically and it's also comfortable for people's voices. Now, it's a bit of a challenge to get people to accept that. And I think, very early days, but I'm really excited about this project, is kind of exposing people to the idea of how does music help us with our practice? How can it fit in? So that's probably, and I also played around with the rhythm, like Dharma was talking about the 5/4 time, which was almost an accident. It's like, I need to breathe somewhere. I'll add in another bar. So I'm not great with rhythm, but I think that's another way that helps us to stay together. And I know that there are some very talented, musicians in the Sangha who could do complex rhythms over the top of the chant. So I hope that can be something to explore in the future as well.
Thanks so much, Alison. And I can probably speak for a lot of us by saying that I'm glad that you followed Rinpoche's advice and pursued music. Let's hear a little bit from Alison's version.
I bow to Manjushri with utmost respect. Gentle voice guide you, always protect. From clouds up to veils, your wisdom is free. Brilliant and pure like sunshine you be. The nature of truth you see and impart. A volume of progeny you hold at your heart. Clouded by ignorance in endless night. Beings suffer cruelly from torment and fright.
Wonderful, so nice. Okay, let me next introduce Cy Gorman. Cy Gorman, welcome.
Hi there.
Hi, Cy. Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from Melbourne, Australia.
Great. Thanks and welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background as a musician?
Yeah, sure. I was brought up in a musical family, but then I went on to study at the Victorian College of the Arts here in Melbourne, studying composition and jazz improvisation. And after that, I received a mentorship program in sound design and music production. And from there, I've gone on to focus a lot on interaction and digital media design. And in that field where it integrates with my practice, I'm interested in creating resonant audio-visual expressions of Dharmakaya through the integration and application of sound and lighting design, which I hope can directly influence the well-being of sentient beings and the environments they habit. So underpinning my musical training is also, when I combine it with my Tibetan Buddhist studies and practice, I'm also trying to integrate some of the teachings that I've received in Nada Yoga and microtonal harmonic musicology, inspired by the teachings and transmissions that I received from the Gundesha brothers, and in particular the late Ramakant Gundesha. And all of these things in an accumulative way, I'm hoping, and I am seeing slowly over time, are helping to attune and align my practice with Buddha Dharma and to create more powerful environments of light and sound that can hold space, can act as like something to bathe in whilst you're practicing, and also create conducive circumstances for really the imbued energy of particular deities that we practice, and seeking to develop those qualities, in this case Manjushri. Yeah. So for this particular composition, I started out the work by seeking to set the praise to a melody, and I realized actually that I wasn't going to have enough time to do this in a way that I felt was worthy, and so I took another path on this one. I did it as a spoken word piece and set it to the Manjushri seed mantra, Omarapat Sanadi. And on repeating it, I realized, which I had never realized before, if you just say it in a constant stream, it's in a flow of 7. And so that's there as sort of like a supportive energy within the track. And then in this particular version, I realized that it's more like just receiving the prayer and listening to the prayer whilst reciting the seed mantra. So yeah, in future, I would definitely focus more on creating melodic, sort of singable versions. But yeah, this is, it's been absolutely wonderful, like so wonderful to be part of this. And I just want to gratefully acknowledge the blessings of the Khyentse Vision Project. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cy. We love your version and really look forward to hearing more projects that you put together in the future. Let's hear a bit from Cy's version.
Perfectly pure, with qualities rare, 10 boomies traversed the conqueror's air, adorned with 112 noble signs. You are the Buddha who constantly shines, lighting the darkness of mind here and now. Manjushri, to you I wholeheartedly bow.
Fantastic. Great. Let me now introduce Nick Demeris. Nick, hello.
Hi.
Hello and welcome.
Good evening.
I don't see you, but maybe.
I'm here. It looks like there's a moon above my head.
Oh, hang on a tick. I'm just trying to find him. I'm trying to find him. There we go. There you are, Nick.
No problem. No problem. Hi, Nick. You're kind of a wanderer. Where do you find yourself now?
I find myself on the land of the Lenni Lenape in Mannahatta. I just arrived back from, oh, wow, the moon is rising very big in front of me. Incredible. I just was traveling. I'm doing a lot of work right now across various places around the New York area. And I just arrived back from a gig. And so apologies to my strange lighting. I thought I was going to be grounded somewhere, but the traffic and the accidents and the highway and causes and conditions allowed me to be in this car, which has actually been really amazing to be in Manhattan actually for this. I thought I was going to be someplace quiet country, but it's actually very beautiful to be in the middle of this plaza junction.
Perfect. It sounds perfect. There's going to be an eclipse tonight, I hear also, which should be also interesting for you if you stay up late enough.
Yeah.
Nick, tell us
exactly. Yeah.
When you're not howling at the moon, what are you doing? Tell me about your background as a musician and interest in making Dharma music.
So my background as a musician, I started making music when I was 10. I started playing the drums. I sang in choirs. I did a lot of theater and musical theater. I started studying some jazz vocals. And I've been making music very dedicatedly the last 10 years based in New York City. And then the past, working a lot with Carnegie Hall here as a teaching artist, as a kind of semi-conductor and circle singing creator and writer, composer. And then in the past 5 months, I've been in Mexico, with my brother Benny Oyama, who's also on this call. We've been making Dharma music. We created a Dharma music project called the Free Jewels. We've been doing song circles and touring around Mexico, doing original versions of Dharma music. So I started making Dharma music when I met Sangster Khyentse Rinpoche, and really at the Tata Puja in 2017 in Beer, when I found myself too bored and too irritated to sit all day and chant Tibetan for so long. It shows you what a deluded kind of person I am, actually. But I had to go outside and just work on a version of the 7-line prayer because I could wrap my head around that. And I started singing and playing and working with a version, and started creating a chantable English version, because I'm very irritable despite my kind of congeniality outwardly. I get very bothered very easily. And I can get very annoyed that things aren't like ready and available for audiences. So I was like, man, I have to have a chantable version the way the Tibetan 7-line prayer is in 7 beats per line in 7 lines. I was like, man, these guys got it down. So I was like, we have to have this in English. So I think that started on my my interest, my passion, my draw towards making Dharma music, and then it just keeps growing from there.
Lovely. Let's hear a little bit of what you put together.
I bow to Manjushri with utmost respect. Gentle voice guide, you always protect. From clouds of two veils, your wisdom is free. Brilliant and pure like the sunshine you be. The nature of truth you see and impart. A volume of prana you hold at your heart.
Fantastic. Nick, you want to say anything more about how you put that together once we provided you with the words?
Yeah. Well, I was working on another prayer with you, and then which was really my main focus of another song that hopefully we get to share another time. But you sent me the prayer, and I started working on a version. And after our work, because I was primarily focused on that other song, and I just started working it and singing, and then found myself pretty frustrated. I was in a house, and I did about 3 hours of versions. I came up with like a kind of a Celtic version and a kind of a flamenco version, but nothing was kind of correct. So, and then I found this melody, and like anything, like practice or anything, something usually comes after a lot of effort. The breakthrough came, and I found this melody that and it just motivated me. And then I recorded a scratch version of it, and I tried the prayer over it, and I kind of liked it. And then I set about recording it. I worked with a really lovely producer in Mexico City to put together the version. It's mostly 99% my voice. It's all vocal. Like Harry said, I work similarly in terms of using the voice as an instrument, and kind of starting with that. And it can be similar to Alison as well. And that is what got me started. And then just used, having the constraint of the prayer of like, okay, it's an odd number of lines. How do you, in Western music, we're used to making things in an even format. So that was a challenge and beautiful. And I guess the last thing I'll say generally is, like, you didn't ask this as a question, but I'm particularly interested in making versions of songs that are going to magnetize people to Dharma in a way that Beatles maybe magnetized people to spirituality, or in the way that Kanye West and the Sunday Service Choir is magnetizing people to gospel. And I think Dharma music needs to be so good that people don't know what Dharma is. They hear it and they want to listen to it. And I really believe that's the kind of wave. And that goes for, it doesn't matter if it's raga or qawwali or Celtic or gospel or hip hop or anything what we make. I think we have to strive to go towards an excellence that is going to bring people along, regardless if they're practitioners or not. And I think that's what I'm going to try to do, and be a part of the wave of people that maybe will contribute to that.
Fantastic. Thanks. That's very eloquent. So I understand your brother, Benny Oyama, is in the room also. Benny, are you there?
Hey, everybody. How's
Hi,
it going?
Hi, Benny. Where are you now, Benny?
I'm in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Wow. Yeah, really.
Welcome.
The wind
yeah.
From the beach in Lebanon, coming through the window. We have a cyclone coming in. Spent the day at the beach filming a song for Medicine Buddha to share tomorrow with Buddha's Moon coming. And I'm enjoying myself thoroughly. And I loved hearing everybody's songs. It's so much fun to hear what everyone did with it, you know. so many different approaches.
I agree. Benny, can you share a little bit with us about your background as a musician and as a Dharma musician?
Yeah, sure. My father was a singer, not professionally, but he grew up in Morningside Heights, singing doo-wop music, a cappella music from the 1950s, like shoo-doop, shoo-be-doo, shoo-doop, wop, that sort of a thing. And I grew up doing musical theater. I started to study bass guitar. I started to study electric guitar and acoustic guitar. At around 20 years old, I started to travel with music, playing jazz, playing songs from the 1950s, from the 1960s, a lot of folk music, a lot of psychedelic music. In the past couple of years, I got really into bossa nova Brazilian music, which has been an engagement with the country and the culture for many years now. And I've been living in New York the past 10 years, doing music there. So about 15 years now of working professionally with music. I've released 2 albums. One's all duets, bossa nova with musicians in New York, and the other one's compositions of my own. These were both released last year. And I think I've always been interested in Dharmic music, but I never called it that before. Buddhism and meditation practice and conceptualizing non-duality really came to me with my therapist when I was about 16 years old, and he gave me a practice. He started me with shamatha meditation, and he sent a lot of teachers my way in the form of Krishnamurti, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, Ken Wilber, sort of these very non-secular and crossing many streams kind of philosophizing. Then last year in Mexico in October, I took refuge with Khenpo Samduk Rinpoche of the Kagyu lineage, Drikung, under Garchen Rinpoche. And we started doing our song circles there to magnetize people to the Dharma with Brother Nick, Sister Virginia, Monkaya, and many others as well. And I've been traveling with him. We went to Tulum. Khenpo and Nick and I were in Tulum together along with Monkaya, performing, trying to find a way to harmonize music and teachings together. And now I'm in Rio de Janeiro taking a break after 2 very powerful weeks in Sao Paulo with Khenpo Samduk, where we had 3 refuge ceremonies. And we actually performed my Manjushri praise there as people were taking refuge. So we're starting to find a way of sharing music that's effective in real time, in the context of teachings and in the context of ceremony and ritual. And it's very emergent and very exciting. And I'm really enjoying the ride so far.
Very, very cool. So cool to hear that your Manjushri version was used in a context like that. Sorry, you were going to say?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is cool. I printed this mantra songbook for the refuge taking that we did. I created all the graphics and everything. So we have White Tara here, and here's a Manjushri praise. So everybody has had these books and we're able to sing along with what we were doing. So we're trying to come at this in a way to kind of create a new culture within the tradition that's already there, in order to open people's hearts and plant something inside of it that can be watered and grow. I hope that the people who took refuge while hearing this song and while hearing Tara Branca, White Tara, that we performed also will remember that, the next time they hear it, they'll be able to go back to when they took refuge, which was perhaps a moment that changed the trajectory of their lives. So I'm very much building my wings as I fly with this.
Wonderful. I really look forward to hearing more of what you are doing in the future. Benny, let's hear a little bit of what you put together for today.
Entrapped in the prison of samsara's guile, you love everyone like a mother her child. With 6 deep tones, your rich voice resounds, like roaring dragons, and thunder it pounds. Manjushri, 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 Manjushri.
I love it. It's really, really beautiful and really creative. I've been told to tell everybody in the audience that if you like what you're hearing here, again, the full version of all of these songs are up on our YouTube channel, Kinsey Vision Project YouTube channel. We put together a playlist with all of the versions from today that beyond just having the beautiful audio, we've put together really nice visuals for a lot of the music videos as well. So they're really beautiful multimedia pieces of art in the end that it's really worth checking out. So go to our YouTube page and you can see those.
Zack, I was also going to say they're also up on Facebook. So if you're a Facebooker, they're also up there, and they will be up on Instagram soon. We just haven't had time to put them up yet. And I actually just wanted to do a quick shout out to Alicia, who I think is on this Zoom, who did the amazing animation for Nick's version. Alicia, thank you so much. That was such an extraordinary animation that she did in one day on the weekend, last second. So please go and check out her beautiful animation that she did for Nick's version. And there's also a beautiful piece of art that was done by Emily, which is put to Harry's version, which also was done very recently, specifically for this first music event. So thanks so much to all the artists who collaborated as well.
Yeah, they're really amazing stuff that they've done. So great. So now that the first half of the event is over and we're a little bit behind time, so I'm going to welcome back on Christian. Christian, welcome back to the room. I know it's very, very late. Christian's joining us from Europe, so it's a heroic effort he's making to stay awake through all hours of the night to be here with us today. So Christian, I know it was our plan to have a kind of open discussion. I'm not sure if we're going to have time to have so much open discussion, but I thought at least we could direct at least one of our questions to each of the musicians. Sure. And at least have a little bit of a conversation. So you want to proceed?
Yeah, I will begin. And the first question is going to be for Harry. And I understand, I think it was not mentioned, I understand that you also created a version of the Heart Sutra that was composed by putting so many different voices together and chanting together. I saw that recording, it was absolutely fantastic. And in general, I'm wondering, based on the work that you have done for this, as well as for the Heart Sutra, what Western musical traditions have inspired you most for the work that you have been doing for Dharma music?
Well, I think I can't really move that far away from my choral background. And there's something about the richness of layered voices that can be very evocative. But the challenge of that is also Western choral music reminds a lot of people of church. Not that that's necessarily bad, but there's so many associations with basically theism that come with that. And so one has to be a bit careful. So as far as Western music, from the classical side, I really like Celtic music quite a lot. And early music. So music basically written before the rules were really set down. So we're talking, 12th to 14th century. I'm not an expert by any means. And recently I've been very inspired by South American music. Yeah.
That, if I can just follow up on that, I think it's interesting what you said about the choral music and the associations that we have. Recently, in one of the workshops we had in the Kinsey Vision project, translation workshops, we talked a little bit about that. And one of our Tibetan translators, Tenzin Puchung, he actually mentioned that for him, when he goes to a church, he's Tibetan, so he was brought up in the Tibetan Buddhist context. He's a translator. When he goes to the church, it deeply touches him and he feels deeply inspired. So he doesn't have all these associations to theism, but it strikes a very important emotional chord with him. So I think it's actually, it's great that you do that, and as well as Alison, because it is a very powerful tool to have so many voices layered together. So yeah, is there anything you can say about the magic that happens when you do this kind of work?
It's just kind of something that emerges, I guess. I mean, I try to create something that I would want to listen to myself. And so you just have to kind of find that spot. Yeah, and it's an emergent process. So it takes time, it takes patience, and hopefully we'll all have more time and patience to keep on working on this.
And do you think in Dharma communities that are living or practicing together, this kind of choral work has a future in terms of a live performance?
Yeah, I mean, it all has to do with resources, right? And I think a lot of Western converts to Buddhism tend to be very independent-minded. So for various reasons, it's difficult to get people together to do the kind of rehearsal that's actually necessary to put like a real choral piece together. And so that's why it always has to be tempered with singability if it's really meant for practice.
Great. Right, Zack, I wanted to say if some of the other panelists want to contribute something to one of these questions, just feel free and go ahead. You know, if this is a free-flowing conversation, even better. Otherwise, we can always move on to the next question.
Yeah, does anybody, I'm actually quite curious about the question, if anybody else wants to pipe in with their thoughts about what are their particular inspirations from different types of musical traditions. Maybe some of you had said a few things about that already, but anybody else have something they'd like to say about what inspires them from different traditions?
Yeah, sure. I mentioned some, I'm very, very inspired by, among many types of music, second line music from New Orleans, the music of which is like the spiritual on the feet in the street. Oh, in the saints, that you know, in Brazil that translates more to like the carnival music. I'm very inspired by Qawwali music. I'm hugely inspired by Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and what he has done for Sufi music. I was listening to him on the drive down just to try to figure out, like, wow, what is this guy doing? To me, he's like Pavarotti meets Ella Fitzgerald, and not just oh, that's like cute Sufi music. Like, you know, it's music first, and what he's doing is so amazing musically. I'm just trying to figure out what it is. There's so many, but that's one. Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, which when I saw, just to say, but I've seen, like, you know, Rinpoche many times has posted Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, and I didn't know that, but I've always been a fan of his for a long time. So it gave me such joy to know that there was that parallel.
Yeah, Rinpoche seems to really, really love him. Yeah. Okay, let me move on to next question. I'd like to direct this towards Alison. Alison, we'll come back to the room. And you spoke a little bit about your experience singing in group situations. One question that comes up when we're talking about creating these types of musical versions is how it relates to an audience. I mean, as we know, like, our Buddhist communities are composed from people with a lot of different types of backgrounds. So how do you think about the types of music that might feel compelling to different people from the community? Do you try to think about what different types of melodies or musical traditions might appeal to a broadest audience? Or do you just kind of go with your gut about what feels inspiring to you? Or how do you think about that?
No, I definitely think about I try to think about what will work. Actually, it was interesting doing the preparation for this. I just Googled Wikipedia Buddhist chant just to see what it says. And it came up with this quote from the Gita Sutra, where the Buddha talks about the 5 dangers of reciting Dharma with a musical intonation. I think this comes up a lot in the Theravadan tradition. And I think in Vajrayana, we don't shy away from danger. It's sort of like, the skillful means kind of thing. But I thought it was interesting that the 5 dangers are that you might get attached to the sound, others might get attached to the sound, householders might get annoyed. I think that means the monks just taking up all the airwaves with their songs. People who don't like it will affect their concentration, and it can become a habit that then is passed on down the generations. And so I just thought, okay. Basically, he's saying, music's going to trigger attachment and aversion, and it's probably going to create habits. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It's sort of like, okay, yeah, maybe we don't need to struggle so hard to find the perfect answer that everyone likes, because we're not going to find it. But I do then think about, okay, so what's the purpose of this exercise? It's like try to strip it back to the core. And for me, it's about bringing to life the text and the meaning. And so then finding out what are the essential ingredients to that will help us come together, coordinate our bodies and minds so that we can kind of be of one mind. And so I try to simplify it to the most basic elements and then layer up to, okay, what else do we need? So you try to sing on one note. We can't find one note everyone's comfortable with. Okay, so can we find harmonies? Then if you have harmonies, people don't like to sit, like you might have 3 notes that you're singing as a chord, but then people don't like to stay on a single note. They like to move around. So then you have harmonic movement. What's a meaningful harmonic movement that is graspable by an untrained musical audience or untrained musical performers that can then flow naturally and bring to life the meaning of the words? And so I think for me, a very embryonic kind of experimental stage. And, recognizing that when in a group practice situation, you're working with untrained musicians, you're working like me before I did my musical training, really small vocal ranges. How can you make that work so people can comfortably engage with the words and with the meaning? But it's interesting now in COVID times, we're doing a lot of online practice. And so the whole group practice situation is much less common. It's more often that, as a chant leader, I'm actually working with a lot of individuals in their lounge rooms. And so maybe the musical element is less important and we can use more speech rhythm to get to the meaning of the text. And then the musical element becomes a particular song at a particular point, which becomes a point of inspiration, and the rest of the time we're just actually almost reading a text. And so then the music has a different function in the context of practice. So I think it's really very much horses for courses, and playing around what can we do, and keeping on coming back to what is the purpose here. Like group singing can be immensely powerful but immensely negative, where you think about, football crowds going wild. You think about, Trump and his folks marching on the Capitol building. They were all going rah-rah with chants. So the intention is really important, and then the way you use it and channel that method to bringing people to realise the truth. So, yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Definitely. That's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought so much about the negative aspects of group dynamics. It's interesting that you have that in mind when you're thinking about music. Does anybody else have thoughts about the kinds of things that Alison was talking about, or just what it's like as a musician? I'm sure a lot of you have your own proclivities when it comes to music, if it's just up to you what you'd come up with. But if you're thinking about like a Buddhist community and making music for a community, what comes to mind, or how do you relate to thoughts about trying to appeal to a broader audience, or is it better not to think about those things? Or how do you approach it? Anybody else? Benny?
When I did my Manjushri, I was in Mexico, and I knew that people weren't going to really be able to sing along with me, maybe not even if they had the text in front of them. And now I'm in Brazil, and I'm also sharing the song. So what really came up for me, I was like, how do I create a part that's going to be sticky that everybody can just latch onto? It doesn't need to be the whole thing. It can just be one little part, and that's what's known as the chorus, right? So what I did was the Manjushri, 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 Manjushri. And I was sharing this in the song circle, and my sister Virginia said to me, Kenpo wants you to do the mantra. I think like while we were playing the song. So I improvised this part with the mantra that she passed to me. I hope it's correct. The Om Wangeshwari Mam, 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 Om Wangeshwari Mam. So for me, I think there's some songs that I can share because they're composed and they will move people, and it's a moment for people to receive, and then there's a moment for people to participate, especially in the context of a sangha, in the context of teachings. It's all good, you know, receiving and then also participating. So with the Manjushri song, there's a moment to participate. With other songs I've done, I adapted a Shakyamuni mantra, and that's not really that easy to hook into, and I'm okay with that because it doesn't need to be every song, as long as we have a diversity of songs and diversity of moments that people can connect with. I think if it was all participation all the time, it would get tiring. I think if it was all receiving all the time, it might not create the kind of bonds that we're looking for and the kind of bonds that you find within the tradition when you have everybody chanting in unison, or you have everyone doing the same thing. When we all do the same thing, we go through a process of recognizing our innate unity with one another and recognizing it not in an intellectual way, but in an embodied way, an energetic way. Our brain chemistry, our brain waves. I'm sure if you hooked us up to a machine while we were all singing the same thing over and over again, you would find that there's a similar pattern going on. So those are kind of all the things that are in my field that I'm thinking about.
Thanks, Benny. Appreciate that. Cy, what's the next up? Christian, what is the next topic?
The next topic is for Cy, actually.
Yeah.
So,
actually, I did just want to jump in quickly on the final thing that Benny was talking about. For the last few years, I've been doing some experiments with working with looking at the results of mantra on brainwave activity, and it's been really amazing. Like, I've been using an EEG and with myself and also others, and that's kind of led me more into the realm of looking at how particular neural sync around rhythms and patterns and immersion in particular resonance from a sound design perspective it's really started to shift my practice. So as well as the focus on, I guess, the general overall aesthetics of how something might sound and what the words are in a prayer, also starting to look at patterns of neural syncing to these kind of things, and mantras in particular. And because of, these mantras are ancient, my focus is more and more on the harmonics, the formants in the resonance of how the sounds are actually shaped and formed, and kind of what magic is inside the shaping of the harmonics as a language that kind of works directly with the brain and the overall limbic system. So it's for me, it's really central to the work that I'm doing at the moment. And in particular, my practice is a lot of the time focused in the digital media realm. Film is a really powerful tool to communicate with lots of people asynchronously as well. And also to create, in some ways we're dwelling more and more these days in shelters of light and sound. And I know a lot of us had to do that over the COVID period, but it really highlighted the importance of being able to create really compassionate resonance using that medium. So yeah, I just wanted to follow on what Benny was saying there.
Cy, can I just follow up briefly on what you just spoke, actually? So this, and also you mentioned a concept that you called the resonant Dharmakaya, right? So for you in your experience, in your view, what is this connection that you try to find between the world of the Dharmakaya and your work as a musician and the resonance? What is the nature of this connection?
Well, I mean, I'm getting the tingles when you ask this question because I'm really excited about it. And I think, you know, when we experience that embodied experience of Dharmakaya, you know, the body lights up, the hairs can stand up on your body, and there is an experience of being immersed in an essential and indestructible truth, at least for me in my experiences around practice. And I've found that through my practice, and I guess the tools that I'm starting to play around now, also looking at how optimization of particular sort of frequencies and relationship with frequencies using AI as well, just as a reflective tool. And honestly, at the moment, I'm responding intuitively to the results, but as well trying to look at what's available to me in regards to what science has to offer around particular practices that have been around for a long time. And yeah, I think, okay, so if I frame it like this, and this was an experience I had when it was going to one of the teachings of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and there was, you know, some strong practice, of course, as always, around Avalokiteshvara, but I realized that in my experience of that moment, the Dalai Lama was like the nucleus, this empowered, really strong, central kind of focal point, and everyone became really charged with that energy when we came around, like a group of cells gathering around it, and with that empowered and charged cells, then we go out and we're dispersed into the world, but we've actually increased the charge when we come close to that particular Dharmakaya, that resonance within that space. And so for me, the idea that one could create an entity that imbues the quality of particular deities through light and sound is the practice for me at the moment.
Wow, that's amazing. That's very profound. Beautiful. Shall we move on, Zack, to the next? I think we are soon running out of time.
Yeah, let's move on to the next question, which I'm going to direct to Nick. Nick, so you mentioned before, and I'm also a little bit familiar with, you do a lot of like teaching, singing to people, and I get the feeling from what I've gathered from the way you teach music that it's somehow more than just teaching singing. There's like something else going on, almost spiritually or something like that. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit to what it means for you to teach singing to people. Is it kind of like an emotional or spiritual exercise or something like that? Or how do you see it? And what do you see as your vision of what you're trying to impart when you're teaching music to people?
Thank you for the question. I have moved to Tompkins Square Park, so if you hear the people in the background, that's New York City. But yeah, in that spirit, actually, I call the work that I do human instruments. The bulk of my work that I do is called human instruments, and it's based on the idea that we are the instruments that created all the instruments as far as we know. And the frets of a guitar look like pretty similar to our vocal cords. The original drum is in the center of our chest. And I have experienced again and again that music is just a label of parts of sound interacting with time and space. And similarly, music we have all those elements inside of us. So when I work with people, which I've been doing a lot here in the last week here all around the New York area, I try to approach what I do from the position that music is already there. I'm not really teaching music to anyone. I often don't ever say the word singing. I'm kind of non-traditional in that way. And I'm often trying to bring singing out of people who have some type of maybe block around singing. I'm very informed by hip hop music and jazz as well, and the culture of borrowing, the culture of sampling. I use Mozart's 12 Variations as an example very often, that Mozart got famous on remixing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star 12 times and creating 12 super dope versions of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So taking a simple idea and then playing it with it, kind of, I think like Alison was saying, playing with all these different ways of being. So with people, I often start with people's names. I'm listening for the rhythm, the melody, the inherent musicality in the way people say their names, the way people's mothers called them across the house, the way that which is ordinary. I watched this video one time. I'll tell you this. I watched this video one time of Rinpoche talking about shamatha and talking about the Kagyu masters from the who don't. He's like, they hate anything special. And if it's special, they hate it. Like Halo, no, like everything special they hate. So anyway, I guess the point of it is that I think music is very special, and I want people to understand that music is happening all around all the time. Kind of like Buddha nature or Dharma Dhatu, or it's like it's all around us all the time. It's inside, it's outside. And then accessing notes, accessing tempo, rhythm, is just like an approach. It's like a process of approaching something, more than it is really creating it. It is you have to generate your voice or your playing or whatever you do, but it's already there. It's already happening. It's already inherent to who we are. So I guess I approach everything I do from that point of view, as partly as a means of trying to disarm the huge conceptual hangover people have, especially in the West, around singing and around music, and thinking that it's something that people do out there, or that people who are pros only do it, or people who are on a stage get to do it. And I want everyone to be able to realize their inner Beyonce or their inner Bob Dylan or their inner Buddha Shakyamuni, and recognize that they can approach that, whether just it's in their own practice for their own nourishment or as their profession.
Very nice. That was so fantastic.
Can I add to that? Thank you, Nick. That is so, and it goes back to what Zack was saying before about loving words. It's like hearing the music in the words, loving the text, the meaning coming alive by feeling the words. And I think I totally get what you're saying. I think as soon as you talk about music and singing, a lot of people just go, I can't do that. And what I really want to do is for people to get into the words and feel the musicality of it, and so that it becomes part of them. And so I think that's one of the things that music does, like the earworm kind of concept. But making it accessible to people, I think, is, just so precious.
And who doesn't want to realize their inner Beyonce? Can I address another question to Ben? I've watched some of in preparing for this session here. I watched some of the stuff that you've been doing, and I saw quite a bit of bossa nova. You mentioned that you've been into bossa nova for the last couple of years, and that's really beautiful. So my question is not directly, but I think kind of indirectly related to that, because there's a lot of storytelling, right, in all music in general, bossa nova of course as well. So, and that's an aspect that hasn't been addressed much so far in our discussion, the aspect of music, song, storytelling. So my question would be, in the Dharma context, how do you see in the modern hour, what we are talking about here, what we are doing, in this context, how do you see the role of music and storytelling? How could that take shape, and how could that inform also what other musicians are doing with Dharma, with different Dharma texts, or different, not only now we've worked with prayer, but there's a lot of other literature, Buddhist literature, right? So what are your views on that?
Yeah, amazing. I mean, all we really have are stories, and stories comprise our experience of reality. And it seems within the Dharma tradition, the role of stories is as a vessel for wisdom and eventually to take us beyond narrative, right? Because once we go beyond language, we enter into the non-dual realm. But we kind of need the stories to get there. I think, like the finger pointing at the moon. It's not the moon, but it's the finger. And there's many ways to tell us stories. A rhythm that repeats and then slightly is augmented on the third bar is a story. A melody is a story. And then you have lyrical stories. So there's many ways to tell stories. And what's amazing about music is it's so penetrative. It's like, of all the art forms, perhaps I can make this, perhaps I can posit this, but of all the art forms, it's like the most Vajra-like. It just cuts right through, right? And it is a vessel to carry meaning and narrative and self-reflection and morality and wisdom, and to generate compassion or generate hate through the storytelling modality. I remember hearing a podcast with Malcolm Gladwell, David Byrne, and Rick Rubin, the great producer, and they were talking about songs of protest. And one thing that they were agreeing upon was that the role of protest songs, like in the 1960s, was to sort of make a claim and see who gathered around it. And everybody who gathered around it are the ones who sort of agree with that truth or agree with that narrative, as opposed to trying to convert people. It's more to magnetize those who already hear the call. One definition I heard of grace, like what is grace, is that grace is when you hear the Dharma for the first time, or maybe the 1,000th time, the words of the Dharma, and you go, oh, that's interesting, there's something there. Or your heart opens and you say, oh, I think I need that. Let me investigate a little further. That's grace. Because in this age, it's so available to encounter wisdom teachings and wisdom teachers. It's highly available. We're so connected. But some in this lifetime will never take the red pill, right? They'll never go down that path to investigate further, or perhaps they'll only get as far as they can go. We'll all only get as far as any of us can go. What a benefit that the Dharmic traditions are full of stories, absolutely full of stories. We've been doing Milarepa. We did that for a couple of weeks. I don't remember how many weeks it was. Nick participated, I participated, our good friends here in Brazil, Amana Azul, participated, doing versions of Milarepa's Songs Realization. I mean, it's stunning how much is available there. And I think we just need to channel that and develop our own language around it that connects musically through the language of music, and in a way that moves people on that fundamental level that only music can.
Did you record the Milarepa songs?
Yeah, they're actually all on YouTube. I think they're on the Garchin Center page.
Okay, wow, okay, great. I'm going to check these out.
And following Milarepa, we improvised most of them. Some of us were a little bit more shy. They said, okay, give us the selection a week before. We'll prepare something. Renato from a band called Iman Azul, who I'm collaborating here with. We're doing a recording of Waitara, and we've been doing the refuge ceremonies these past few weeks in Sao Paulo. He did amazing versions of Milarepa in a way that I can't do because it's so out of meter. I think he had the benefit of being a native Portuguese speaker, and so he could just play with the words and have a certain level of detachment from them. That's my theory, because I wasn't able to detach from them in a way. And also I think because of the way that the structured way I kind of think about music and the way I compose, because of my background in folk music and pop music from the 1960s, 1950s, and Brazilian music and bossa nova. I couldn't really think that way. You also asked about, storytelling. Like, you find in different genres, like as I discovered, as I learned Portuguese and as I discovered bossa nova music more and samba canção and samba and funk music from Brazil and all these different genres, is that within the container of the musical genre, you also have certain stories that keep on being told over and over again. So, for example, in bossa nova, it's saudades. It's all about missing past that you can never have again, but missing it with kind of a sweetness and a bitterness. And it's a lot of romance. And then you have a whole theme about nature. And then you have a whole nationalist theme about Brazil and the beauty and the pain and the paradox and everything. And then you have even songs that go into Dharmic territory, like Luiz Bonfim, Vinicius de Moraes, A Felicidade, Happiness, from the film Black Orpheus. I was reading the some of the verses from Six Paramita, some commentary that Khenpo Samduk Rinpoche did on it. And one of them was that happiness is like a drop of water on a leaf that's, vanishes so quickly. And in this song from 1953, a bossa nova song, it says, Tristeza não tem fim, felicidade sim. Sadness has no end, happiness does. A felicidade é como uma gota de orvalho numa pétala de flor. Happiness is like a dewdrop on the petal of a flower, and with a slight oscillation, it falls. So we already have Dharmic songs like Up the Wazoo. It's important, I think, that we don't get too, because this is an emergent field, we don't get too caught up in thinking that there's a Dharmic field of songs and then there's like other songs. It's not like that at all. The world is full of Dharmic songs, and what we can do is recognize that and open a portal to even deeper teachings, inner level teachings, secret level teachings, and make use of the treasure trove of stories that already exist and represent them. So that's what I think.
Thanks, Benny. That's a beautiful sentiment. And on that note, maybe somewhat predictably, we've kind of come to the end. We were hoping to have some more time for like question and answer and conversation, but this is the way things go sometimes. So our plan is to have many more events like this. So each time we'll hope to have more of an audience, and next time certainly hope that we can have more of a conversation and give the audience some opportunities to ask you all some questions as well. So for now, let me just speak on behalf of Christian and myself, and thank you all so much for the efforts you put in making your different versions and participating in this super fascinating conversation today. It's been a great pleasure for me, and I look forward to having more conversations like this in the future. So on that note, let me just turn the floor to Doma, our director, for some concluding remarks. Hi, Doma.
Thanks, Zach. And really all I want to say is just thank you so much to everybody. Thank you for each and every one of you musicians who put in so much time and energy and heartfelt joy and enthusiasm for this. And thanks to our amazing translators. And yeah, I'm so looking forward to our translators producing more and more beautiful poetry and metered verse that you guys can play around with, and lots more juicy collaboration between artists and musos and translators, and let's keep this happening. It's so exciting. So thank you to everybody. And I just wanted to quickly say our next event will be an open day for our translator training program on the 26th, 27th May. So have a look at our social media pages to get the details on that. And we will keep having events like these. We're going to be publishing a few more texts in June. So stay tuned, and thanks so much everybody for coming and listening to this session. Thanks, Zack and Christian, and see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful
Thank you.
organizing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
so
you
much.
all. And thank you so much to Alicia and Emily, who made beautiful Manjushri paintings and animations. Extra special thanks to artists who contributed, who weren't on the panel.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.